Hey guys, normally I do these extra segments during the credits section of the documentaries where I talk a little bit about the additional facts that didn't make it in and some of my experiences with the series, but this was a much bigger documentary and a collaboration between myself and Jonathan over at Life Begins at 8-Bit, so I wanted to take some time for us to sit down and talk a little bit about our experiences with the series and also some of the stuff that didn't quite make the cut. So without further ado, here's a little bit of an informal talk about some of the things that didn't make it into the video with Jonathan and myself, starting now. Hey guys, I am here with Jonathan from Life Begins at 8-Bit, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the things that didn't make it into the history of Star Fox and some of our experiences with the series. So Jonathan, thanks so much for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me, man, and thanks for wanting to collaborate on this and not laughing me out of the room when I suggested we do a comprehensive history of Star Fox.
For sure, man. And I should note that you are the big Star Fox fan, and you are the one that chose this series to cover with me. So I want to make sure that is clear that I like Star Fox, but Jonathan is like the Star Fox super fan.
I feel like over the course of working together, though, you've come around a little bit. You know, at the beginning, at the beginning, you were like, "Oh man, I'm just no good at these games. I just don't like them." And now you're like, I'm not sure that Zero was treated completely fairly. I think I actually kind of enjoyed it a little bit.
I still suck at the games. I'm still horrible at the Star Fox games, but yes, I do agree that I have come around to appreciate them a lot more. Not that I didn't hate them before.
Sure.
I just wasn't like a super crazy into the series. My appreciation for Star Fox came more from Smash Brothers than the actual games.
Yeah, I knew you turned a corner though when you watched the anime and you were like, "Man, they should just make more of that." It was very good.
Oh yeah, absolutely. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later. But first off, I kind of want to get into what are your experiences with the series? Like, what got you into it? What's your favorite game? What's like kind of your history with Star Fox?
So I was a big Nintendo Power kid. I'm sure you've heard this story before, but I was super hyped. Nintendo Power was a source of information about upcoming Nintendo games, but also was definitely a hype machine, and it worked on me. For sure, I wanted to know everything about this game. Every little detail I could get from the magazine was amazing, and I also distinctly remember an end cap, like a department store end cap with the Star Fox demo running, and just being like, "Mom, are you sure you don't have more shopping to do? I'm pretty sure you need more stuff because I got to stay here and get to the Armada level."
Yeah.
Those are my earliest memories of Star Fox. I can remember geeking out about the graphics, like showing the adults in my life who absolutely did not care, but as a young kid, being like, "Look, you've never seen anything like this. Check out these graphics." I mean, like normally Super Nintendo games look like this, and I'd show them like Super Mario World, and they'd be like, "Yeah, okay," and then I'd be like, "But look at this game," and like pop it in and. To have the 3D graphics, I was blown away, and most of the adults in my life were patient with me about it. So that was.
And cool. Is that your favorite game?
I had a lot of time to think about it over the course of writing the script for this documentary, and I think ultimately one, because of nostalgia, is the one I love the most.
Okay.
But it's hard to beat 64. It's real hard to beat 64. The thing that might make 64 edge out a little bit is that just the medal system, just that there's so much left to do. Once you complete the story, once you beat Andros, you can still go back. There's a little bit of stuff to unlock, and you can try for your high score, and it doesn't even tell you right away that there are platinum medals. Right, it just says like here's what you have to do. There's all these hints about getting like bronze and silver or whatever, but actually you can get platinum on everything, and then you can unlock expert mode and do it again. And I do jive on games that encourage you to slam your face against a brick wall. So
me too.
Yeah,
me too. I would say that Star Fox 64 is probably my favorite. I didn't grow up with it. I didn't have it. I didn't have an N64 when it came out, so I played it a little bit at my friend's house, and I wasn't crazy into it, but I played it later on the 3DS version, and I enjoyed that quite a bit more. So I do agree with most people that it is the best game in the series. But I also think Star Fox 2 definitely does not get enough love. I think it's a really, really good game. And I was very surprised at that. I did not expect to like that game, and I really came away thinking it was much better. Same with Zero. I think Zero gets a lot of hate, and I don't think it's a good game, but I think it's still a lot of fun and an interesting game. And I did enjoy some of my time with it, and some of the times I was hating everything and smashing my head against the wall. But
when it shines, though, that game shines brightly. You know, like there's some like the first level boss when you shoot down the different compartments and then you can turn it into the walker and just like go shoot the core, and it's totally reminiscent of Star Fox 2. Moments like that are very good, and I do feel like there's a lot of love put into that game. And as you know, as we talked about in the documentary, it's just that it was also trying to serve a specific hardware purpose, and I think maybe that wasn't the best idea in service of the game that we actually got.
Which is why so many people want to see it done right on Switch. So I guess we'll see. Time will tell if that ever comes to be. It is the 30th anniversary, so hopefully
should we talk about our bet?
Oh, go right ahead. Sure. Why
so
not?
what did I said that a new Star Fox game will come out this year, and they will announce that Dylan Cuthbert is involved in some way, right?
That's what Dylan Cuthbert.
Okay. And what are you saying?
I think at best we'll get a port of Zero.
Okay.
I think at more reasonably, I think it'll be a Game & Watch with Star Fox on it.
Hey, I'll take a Star Fox Game & Watch all day. There's no problem
be cool.
there.
Yeah, but I don't see that happening. I think Zero left a bad taste in Nintendo's mouth. I don't think Star Fox is necessarily done, but I don't think we're going to see it for a while. I'd love to be wrong, but we do have a bet going, so we will see.
We'll see.
Dylan Cuthbert, let us know in the comments below.
It'd be so great if he's just like sitting in his office at Q Games like, oh, how'd they know? Oh, no.
These idiots. Oh, I got to bleep stuff now because YouTube's being all weird about language. So
yeah, dude. Come on.
How dare you?
Family show.
All right, so let's talk about some of the things that didn't make it into the video, or some things we'd like to expand on a bit more.
For sure.
First off, X. Obviously not Star Fox, but the precursor to what became obviously the team that worked on Star Fox and kind of led to the whole project. There are some things about that we want to chat about. What do you got for me?
Well, the first thing is that Dylan Cuthbert said that the game originally ran 1 frame per second faster. So you know, when you play it on a Game Boy, it does feel a little. There's a little jank there. I mean, it's impressive as hell that I'm sorry.
Sure.
It's very impressive that it runs. But it it doesn't feel as smooth as more modern 3D games does for sure. But apparently it originally ran 1 frame per second better. But Nintendo has a very strict policy about if a game comes out on a system, in this case the Game Boy, it has to work on every previous iteration of the Game Boy as well. And there was some technical flaw with the original shipment of Game Boys in Japan that they had to account for with the code in X. And the result was 1 frame of speed got removed to account for this like error fix.
So it could have run smoothly, unlike if they had just gone with it, but it wouldn't have been compatible with the very first shipment of Game Boys.
Right, and so I was reading about this in Chris Kohler's book, which we got in the description on the videos. But yeah, it was something like a grand total of 300,000 units, maybe. Like that's Dylan Cuthbert's best guess. But but it had to work on those. So if you got one of the original Game Boys, you could still play X with no problems.
Huh. Interesting.
Yeah.
And I think the other crazy thing about it is that it received a full localization for the West, but did not get released for reasons. I guess we're assuming that because Nintendo didn't think that it was that the Western crowd was going to it was too complicated, I guess, for the Western crowd.
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of interviews, Dylan Cuthbert's commented on this. He's very insistent that, like, no, it was done. It was 100% done. It wasn't like nearing completion. It was like, no, it's localized. It's basically ready to go out the door. And the reason it ultimately didn't get published is because Nintendo of America felt like it was too complex for an American audience at the time that associated the Game Boy with things more like Tetris and, you know, simple platformers and simple puzzle games.
Sure.
And to be fair, there is a lot going on in X.
Yeah. It's tough to play.
It is tough. There's a lot of interesting mission objectives. It's not completely intuitive, you know, like a lot of Game Boy games were, because, you know, they're pick up and play games, right? But man, it is a really interesting experience, and it's a shame that for the most part in the West we didn't get to engage with it.
Yeah, it's kind of like an unknown, honestly, with a lot of people. You know, I think a lot of people weren't aware of X really existing, and it's such an important game, you know, for you know, game history and technology in general. That it's definitely a shame, and I think I feel extra bad for Mr. Cuthbert, because this just seems to be a constant thing in game development for him, because obviously this is like already done and ready to go out the door, and it gets canceled, and then Star Fox 2 obviously, you know, is pretty much absolutely finished, and it gets hacked right there at the finish line. So I definitely feel kind of bad for Dylan Cuthbert, and it's crazy because there's actually ROMs of the finished version of Lunar Chase that that are out there as well. So like Star Fox 2 and Lunar Chase are both out there. I doubt Dylan Cuthbert himself leaked them, but somebody at Nintendo obviously put those out there for the internet to see back, I think in the early 2000s, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. As we've gone along in researching this, we've spent a lot of time speculating how things might have been different, but you know, it is pretty miraculous that Star Fox 2 got a release so many years later, and that X got like the follow-up on the Nintendo DS. I mean, I never would have guessed that, but here we are, you know. But what would have
Star Fox 2 is unprecedented too. Like nothing has happened like that before, I don't think.
Right. So many years passed, but here it is anyway. But it is interesting to think about, like, what would have happened? How would have things been different? What would Star Fox 64 look like if Star Fox 2 had actually made it out?
Sure. Yeah. Could have been totally different, or could have been totally the same. I guess we'll never know.
We'll never know.
One small fact, it's not really anything we need to go into, that I thought was interesting, was Argonaut's mid-90s logo, the one I used like throughout the entire thing. Hasn't been their logo the entire time throughout their existence. It's just the one I used through the video, just because it was the easiest and most eye-catching. But it shares the same colors as the Super Famicom logo, which I thought was very interesting. The red, blue, yellow, green, I think. Mm-hmm. And I'll put a little thing up here so you can see it, but I thought that was very kind of fascinating to note. Another thing I wanted to talk about was Hajime Hirasawa and the Star Fox soundtrack, which is a very fascinating little story in itself. Obviously, Star Fox as a whole was really kind of crazy how that all came to be, but we didn't really get into Hirasawa's story, which is kind of crazy. So he did 3 games, with the final being Star Fox.
Right.
And he wanted to release his own soundtrack of this. Like, he wanted to put the soundtrack under his name. Like, he thought he had ownership over it, and he even apparently did arrangements of several of the music tracks as well. And obviously, Nintendo was not going to be all that happy about it, because technically it was their music.
Right.
So obviously that ended up with him leaving the company and starting a company called Faith Incorporated, which specialized in MIDI technology for cell phone ringtones. And he became incredibly successful. The company blew up. They do a lot of things now. They don't just do like audio stuff. They do all kinds of different things. But he's this like huge, successful, rich businessman. And who knows if that would have even happened had this disagreement with Nintendo not occurred.
Yeah, and in the meantime, his ghost is still all over the franchise, you know?
Yeah.
Like, one of the things that occurred to me, you know, early on we were talking about, well, what actually is the Star Fox theme? Like, what is the theme song? And actually, the thing that is labeled the theme song is the music that plays during the credit sequence in the original game. Right, but when Ubisoft brought the Star Fox characters to Starlink, the Corneria theme came with them, because I think in a lot of ways that song in particular is the one that fans associate the most with the series.
It's the best song in the franchise.
It's so good. It's so good. Yeah, it's such a great song, and it's missing from 64. It feels like the unofficial theme song to me.
I agree, I think that was on purpose. I think because Kondo and somebody else did the score for 64, and I think Nintendo intentionally was just like, no, like this is bad blood. I don't know for sure. I'm speculating here, but it just feels like they went out of their way not to use a lot of the music from the first Star Fox.
Well, the other thing I'll say about it is that I think his style was reproduced fairly closely for Star Fox 2. I mean, if you really listen to the soundtracks for the first two games, they do feel like they're both part of a greater whole. And so even though he wasn't working on that, I feel like the composers at the time were trying to make it feel like it fit with the sound of the first game.
Absolutely. Star Fox 2 soundtrack is definitely very underrated, and obviously because it hasn't been out much, But
then Star Fox 64 is a completely different beast. It's got its own themes, also very memorable, but it's hard to beat that Corneria stage.
Exactly. I like I said, I am not crazy about the Star Fox 64 soundtrack, and that's not because I didn't grow up with it, so it might be a nostalgia thing. But even not being a huge Star Fox fan on the SNES, the music has always stuck with me. It's always been huge, and I still think Star Fox on the Super NES has quite possibly one of the greatest. It's definitely a top 5 soundtrack for me on the Super NES. So
it also feels kind of evocative of the time. Like, listen, I was a pretty cool kid. Okay, so I was listening to a lot of
were you now?
Oh yeah, I mean later I lost some of that cool, but back in the day I was listening to a lot of like house and like early techno, and Star Fox's soundtrack fit right into that kind of music. There's a lot of those elements, like a lot of that like arcadey, like kind of impactful sound that you get on the Corneria stage, and a lot of kind of the bass lines felt like they were ripped right out of what I was listening to in the radio at the time. So that really dates me as listening to the radio, but yeah, I was listening to the radio.
For sure. A snapshot of the 90s, 100%.
Yeah.
Could not agree more. The last thing I want to talk about with Star Fox on the Super NES was that, I just found this randomly while looking through some stuff, is that EB Games had a pre-order where if you purchased the game when it came out in March, you got a free Star Fox hat, which I thought was kind of crazy because that was a rarity back in those days. It's not to say that it didn't happen, but very rare for physical products to be, given free alongside a video game, especially in like the late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like these days, anytime you get a freebie, it's like an in-game item, right? Like we don't, like if you got a physical thing, this is just me speculating and anecdotally rambling on here, but I feel like if you get a physical thing, it's because you bought a collector's edition specifically to get that kind of stuff. But if it's like, oh yeah, pre-order bonuses typically are like DLC that you punch in a code and you get a gun or a costume or something, right?
Yeah. It speaks to, I think, how much hype was behind this game. That I don't know if Nintendo covered that marketing themselves, if that was a deal they made, or if they split. A lot of times the company will split, the retailer will split costs with the publisher. It's just kind of crazy, to see that how much marketing hype was behind Star Fox, where they were giving away physical items if you purchased the game close to launch, which I thought was kind of not a pre-order. It's not a pre-order. You had to actually buy the game.
Right.
But still, pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And then there was the Nintendo Power comic, which ran from I believe early 1993 to late 1993. I think it ran throughout all of 1993 in Nintendo Power, and it was by artist Benimaru Ito. And it's pretty cool. I remember reading it at Nintendo Power, and we were actually talking about this before we started recording, and you were telling me some interesting things that I had not known. So lay it on the audience.
So one of the things that I came across when I was reading about the comic is that it goes into a lot of detail about the rivalry between Fox McCloud's dad, James McCloud, and Andros, and apparently the rivalry was so strong that at one point Andros attempted to murder James McCloud by like planting a bomb on his car, like some real mafioso kind of stuff. Unfortunately, Fox's mom got in the car and perished, which only served to make their rivalry stronger. But that's pretty dark stuff that didn't make it into the SNES game.
And it's worth noting that this is before James is even mentioned. This is how many years? 4 years before Star Fox 64, when James's first, I believe that is his first mention is in Star Fox 64.
Yeah, they go into detail about Team Star Fox being mercenaries, like they're interplanetary mercenaries. They're guns for hire essentially, which I think is one of the coolest aspects of the Star Fox mythos. You know, they're not necessarily great heroes; they're mercenaries first and foremost, which is why Pepper gets a big bill at the end of the game that he's got to pay, right? Yeah. But yeah, and so actually in the, I believe in the comic, the original take on it was that the R-Wings didn't belong to Team Star Fox. You know, they were mercenaries who were capable pilots, and so Pepper allowed them to pilot this new experimental space fighter that the Cornerian Air Force had developed.
Huh. I did not know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. But then, of course, all of that got retconned with 64.
But obviously, so I guess we don't know for sure, but we don't know if James was a plan to become part of the Super NES original, or if they pulled him from the comic for 64. I guess we don't really know, like, it was a chicken and the egg kind of situation, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not really aware at how much, like, extraneous detail or how many extraneous characters got cut, you know, to keep the game or the story of the game tight and not have to introduce more graphics or whatever. But so it's interesting. It would be really cool to find out how much of the story in the comic was created for the comic, or how much of it came from the concepting phase of the original game. And I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of fascinating. I'd love to be a fly on the wall to kind of figure out where that actually, what's the truth there. Speaking of Star Fox 64, you wanted to chat a little bit about the promotional VHS tape.
Right, so I actually experienced this. I actually got this tape at one point to help promote Star Fox 64. Nintendo
Back in '97?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good. Nintendo Power shipped subscribers an actual VHS tape, and the premise of it was that two guys wearing Sega and Sony T-shirts kidnap a Nintendo employee and threaten him to divulge secrets about this new Star Fox project. And of course, he doesn't want to give up the goods, so they have to. I believe there's a scene where they attach jumper cables to Mario, like a stuffed Mario. You know, like you better talk, or we're gonna electrocute
this is so
Mario.
90s.
Yeah,
this is so 90s.
It was very 90s. The best thing about it is that every person in this VHS is an adult, but they act exactly like a 6-year-old would imagine that an adult acts. You know, it's like 6-year-olds in adult bodies. Like, well, you better talk. You know, just like very overdramatic and like super intense, but also hilariously inept.
Like a live-action cartoon, pretty much.
Pretty much, yeah. And of course, you know, there's all these moments where he's describing the game and the audio clips. There's audio clips now, and the graphics are you know, unprecedented. And then he's like, but that's just for starters. And then the Sega and Sony guy look at him, and they're kind of like, wait, there's more? And then he tells them about the Rumble Pack, of course.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Interesting. That's I still need to sit down and watch that. I'll actually probably put some footage alongside this, so you can kind of see it in action.
So over the top, man. So over
definitely,
the top.
Yeah. Another product of the '90s, for sure. And then also another thing in Star Fox 64, we're both big Gundam fans. I think that is no secret. But there is apparently a Gundam reference in Star Fox 64.
Yeah, they're kind of littered all over the Armada stage. So it's one model. There's a monkey shaped, humanoid mech that has a gun, has a big shield, and flies around. There's a green one. There's definitely some blue ones, and then there's a red one referencing Char Aznable from the Mobile Suit Gundam series. And Peppy even chimes in on the radio to tell you, like, watch out, this one's fast, or something to that effect, alluding to the idea that Char's red Zaku 2 is infamously 3 times faster.
Three times faster.
3 times faster than a normal Zaku. And then at the end of the level, you fight a white one, which, resembles the original Mobile Suit Gundam.
Interesting. That's wild, man. I love little Easter eggs like that are kind of hidden away. Only fans would pick up on them, but I think that's pretty cool. So next is the Virtual Boy, quote unquote, Star Fox demo that has become notoriously infamous. And from what we can tell, does not exist. I think somebody posted a video. I cannot remember who posted it, but
so his name is Groove Raider.
Groove Raider.
And I would be remiss if I didn't mention that we did attempt to reach out to Groove Raider.
We did.
I reached out to him via Facebook, and I think I reached out to him in a different way as well. It's been a while now, but Groove Raider posted this footage from a consumer electronics show that he recorded in the Nintendo section, where they were demoing upcoming Virtual Boy games. And one of them does feature spaceships that are shaded polygons, right? And this is an important detail because Red Alarm was developed for the Virtual Boy and did release and is in a lot of ways kind of like Virtual Boy's answer to Star Fox, but those are wireframe graphics, right? This is a different thing. These are fully shaded polygons that admittedly do look like they could be in the Star Fox universe, but they definitely aren't an R-wing or a recognizable ship. And so we dug into a lot of this because there's been a lot of chatter on the internet about Star Fox Virtual Boy, but it appears to be something called Starship Demo. That's about as definitive as I think we got, right?
Yeah, that's what the community has pretty much come to know it as, is the Starship Demo, and that's what everyone refers to it as, especially in like the Virtual Boy community, who we spoke to about this a little bit as well.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of we read through a bunch of magazine scans from the time to see if we could definitively determine if it was Star Fox or not, and I believe a couple of them referred to it as Star Fox-like.
Yes.
Which I mean, I totally get it. If especially you got to keep this in context. Like at the time, the number of 3D games on home consoles very small. It's entirely possible that Star Fox is maybe the game that you've seen that looks this way. And so here's something that looks really similar on the Virtual Boy. I can kind of see where there would be some confusion about that. But the best we could determine is that it is the Starship Demo, and we cannot confirm that it was ever part of a Star Fox game or intended to be a Star Fox project.
Yeah, Nintendo never referred to themselves as Star Fox, like not once that we could find. We spent almost 4 or 5 hours one night just researching this and digging for facts, and definitely not Star Fox from everything we can tell so far.
I mean, it is really compelling, whatever it is.
It's interesting.
Yeah, like I would love to see what this game would have been, even if it was something resembling Star Fox on the Virtual Boy, that would have been worth a play. But yeah, there's nothing tying it directly to Star Fox that we can tell.
Yes. And speaking of things that are kind of tied to other things, when Dinosaur Planet was first shown off at E3 back in 2000, I believe, Nintendo Power actually This is before the mixing of the two series, Dinosaur Planet and obviously Star Fox Adventures, happened. But Nintendo Power actually called. I thought this was really fascinating. The opening scene where Crystal is fighting the ship at the beginning. And they said, quote, a Star Fox-like battle that pits you against a mothership, against you and your flying dragon. So it's fascinating to me that Nintendo Power actually called this game Star Fox-like. Obviously not the whole game, but they
Sure.
mentioned Star Fox before any of this stuff had actually happened. I just thought it was an interesting little tidbit that I stumbled on at one point. And I wasn't even like looking for a star. This wasn't during research. I was just reading in Nintendo Power, and I saw this randomly. So pretty interesting.
Yeah.
And then go ahead.
Real quick, I want to give a shout out to Forest of Illusion. We mentioned them in the video, of course, but the details that we have about Fox being in the game prior to moving the whole project to GameCube are directly because of them. And I got to play through that demo because of them and play Fox McCloud on the N64. So if you haven't checked that out, maybe you should.
Definitely, yeah. Forest of Illusion is super awesome. And after Star Fox Adventures came Star Fox Assault, which I think a lot of people like, and you had some things to say about that.
Okay, so this is my favorite anecdote. Like when we were doing the research and combing through all the Star Fox history and talking about like what should be in the script, what shouldn't be in the script. This is one of the things that we had to cut, and it kind of hurt the most because it's so good.
I apologize.
No. Of course, it's all good. But so we're gonna share it with you now. And basically, what I want to do is give a giant shout out to the localization team for Star Fox Assault, because in the manual for this game, it describes how Andrew Orkney rises to power in Andross's absence, and it says Andross an ape, Orkney also an ape. Orkney's army uses unexpected guerrilla tactics, and battles take a turn for the worse. I love it. They got that. Whoever put that pun in there deserves a raise. I hope they got it. It's my favorite detail from this manual, guerrilla tactics.
It's amazing, and I think Star Fox Assault doesn't get enough credit. I think it's a lot better than people give it credit for, in my opinion.
I agree, especially that first stage is basically everything I wanted in a Star Fox game on the GameCube. You know?
Absolutely.
It took me a while to come around to the joys of switching between different gameplay modes on the fly, but then that's really cool too, that you can jump out of the R-Wing and run around on foot and blast bad guys and then jump right back in and rocket off and defend your allies from incoming fighters. You know, there's some unique experiences in Assault that really aren't anywhere else, and I do think it's pretty underrated.
I think it's also very interesting that in the early 2000s, like late 90s, early 2000s, they seemed just like hell-bent on pulling everybody out of the R-Wings and getting them on foot. I think that they wanted, and I assume that was the case because they wanted like the characters to be more like, front and center rather than like, because you only just see them in these vehicles. But I think that I'm assuming that they wanted to tie people more to the characters, but they were hell-bent on it, and they just kept doing it over and over again, so whether fans liked it or not.
So one of the things that I keep thinking about with Assault is that, we mentioned in the documentary that Miyamoto wanted to do more of an adventure style game with Star Fox after Star Fox 64, and so Imamura was already working on that before they teamed up with Rare and the Dinosaur Planet project. But Imamura's original intention was to have Fox McCloud use a gun, right? And ultimately they quashed that because the Crystal staff served other purposes, and in addition to combat. So I think it's really interesting that on the next game, Imamura was like, we should probably give him like a lot of guns though. Like, what if he had a blaster and a machine gun? And what if he could throw grenades and also had a sniper rifle? So, like, he got there. He got what he wanted. It took an extra game to get there, but Imamura got Fox McCloud with a gun.
And I have to wonder if that was, like, more what he envisioned before everything. Yeah, we talk about that briefly in the video, but if that's what he kind of like wanted before everything made the switch to Rare's dinosaur planet, being brought into the fold.
The other thing that's a little crazy is Imamura was like, let's make a Star Fox game where Fox has a gun, and then Miyamoto was like, well, you should team up with Dinosaur Planet over at Rare, while Jet Force Gemini was in production. Jet Force Gemini is kind of, in my mind anyway, like the third person shooter on that console, and it was right there.
You also have to wonder if Rare was also like put their foot down too. We don't know
Sure.
what happened behind closed doors.
Sure.
Yeah, I had never considered Jet Force Gemini being like a potential thing that they could have kind of squeezed in there.
I just think it's an interesting coincidence that Rare was working on the exact thing that Imamura kind of wanted to do, and they did something else anyway.
But I guess it was like the Fox looking like Saber was
Sure.
what ultimately kind of like started that whole conversation.
Sure. Yeah, I think it makes sense. It's just an interesting little fact, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And then something I just want to mention is Star Fox Zero: The Battle Begins, the Star Fox like CGI anime. It's so good. I watched it last month for the first time. I had never seen it before, and I was blown away. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and I couldn't believe that this wasn't like how they made Star Fox Zero, because like the characters had so much character, and there was like these interactions, and like the secret between Pepper and Peppy was like really kind of fascinating, and just like the battles were really cool. It just seemed like that's what Star Fox Zero should have been, was like more of that, please.
Right, more character interactions, more intrigue, more drama.
Yeah. It just seemed like they just kind of like, and like I think Zero is great, and I don't mind like them getting straight to the point of like getting right to the battles, but I also I felt so attached to the characters after watching The Battle Begins than I ever have in any Star Fox thing ever.
My hot take is that when I played 64, I thought Slippy was pretty annoying. Like just sort of.
I love Slippy. Slippy was my favorite as a kid, so I take great offense.
Even as a kid, I was like, Slippy shot one down. Good for you, Slippy. Let me get back to work. Slippy's always in trouble. I was kind of annoyed by Slippy.
I didn't say he was like this heroic, like amazing pilot. I just liked him because he was a frog.
Yeah, but then the anime, the way they portray Slippy in the anime is great. Really funny character, brilliant mechanic, and then also there's there are a couple moments in the anime and in the game where Slippy gets a little aggressive, like let's get him, and it's like, whoa, Slippy. I remember when you shooting down one fighter was a pretty big deal, and now you're a little bloodthirsty here.
Yeah, and I highly recommend it to anybody that has not watched it. If you're a Star Fox fan, or if you're not a Star Fox fan, I think anybody will find some enjoyment. I'll link it below in the description.
Yeah, I mean it's just on YouTube, so yeah,
absolutely.
Everybody should watch it.
Definitely. And that's pretty much all we have. Do you have any final thoughts you want to share?
Mainly what I want to share is I really appreciate working with you, man. This has been a wonderful experience. I think I'm very proud of the full video, of both of the halves of the videos. I've definitely learned a lot through this process, and I hope everybody enjoys it.
Definitely, yeah, and I really appreciate you working with this through me and putting up with me, because I can be very, I am very, I guess, demanding, and somebody that is just like, I'm a perfectionist, so I can be a little pushy at times. So
well, the results speak for themselves, man.
Well, I appreciate it, but no, this was a lot of fun, and an awesome project, and just in time for the series' 30th anniversary, which is great timing. We didn't even mean to do it; it just kind of ended up this way.
It worked out.
It did.
You know what? I do have one thing left to say about the series.
Sure.
Well, the first thing is there isn't a new Star Fox game on the horizon that we know about. But we mentioned fan projects in the video. If you haven't checked out X Zodiac or Star Fox EX, please do that. But then here's my take. I feel like a lot of people didn't give Starlink the time of day because they didn't want to collect a bunch of toys. And that's totally fair. That's totally fair. but you're missing out on a great game, and I would strongly encourage anybody who's even remotely interested to get the digital copy. It comes with everything. You don't have to buy any of the toys at all, and you can experience the whole game. And if you get it on Switch, it comes with the whole Star Fox crew. So there's my plug.
I will also mention that you can get the physical R-Wing version pretty cheap these days for Switch. So if you really want that, it's pretty easy to track down and obtain for not much money.
Well, and actually to that point, I believe Star Fox Zero still is as well.
Yes, Star Fox Zero. I just picked it up for, I think, $10, and it was sealed.
I bought
it
with guard,
used.
Right? It came with guard and everything.
And it came with guard, too.
Yeah.
It was sealed with guard. Like, I thought it was a used copy and brand new, so I guess that's how many copies they didn't sell, that they were just transferring these to used. So I don't even know.
A buddy of mine's has 4 kids, and they were starting to get into video games, and I got them Zero, and they broke it.
And they hated you forever.
The youngest one, and they hate me forever. The youngest one put it and Mario 3D World in the Wii at the same time and snapped them. And then I just bought another copy because they're so cheap and still available, brand new. So like, who cares?
Yeah, oh, that's too funny. That's too funny. Yeah, I would say give Zero another shot. I think some people, I don't think it's good, but I think it's far from as horrible as everyone makes it out to be.
It's
I think
definitely
it's a good
worth
game.
Playing, for
yes, sure. Definitely, I think it's a solid, 7.5 out of 10 for me. But I also think that there's a lot of great things there, and especially for Star Fox fans, there's a lot of cool scenes and really impressive visual stuff that happens throughout it.
For sure.
So Jonathan, where can everybody find you, and what is it that you do on your respective channel and platform?
So I am one half of the team that is Life Begins at 8-Bit. Life Begins at 8-Bit is a 40-month look back at 40 years of video game history, and we're looking back at those games by streaming on Twitch every Wednesday night at 7:30 Central. We're also on Twitter at Life Begins 8-Bit and Instagram as Life Begins at 8-Bit. And we've got an active Discord going, so if you want to get into some goofy conversations about games that don't exist but should, or talk about the last thing that you made in your kitchen, we're kind of a variety Discord over there. Feel free to jump in.
And I will link all this stuff in the description below so you guys can find it very easily. And Jonathan, thanks again so much for joining me. Thanks again for being a part of this project. It was a pleasure to work with you, and maybe we'll do it again one of these days.
Dude, I can't wait. Let's do it.
Excellent. Thanks so much, guys. Bye.